Hey everyone, and welcome to tonight's workshop. Excited to have you here as we're going to have a jam-packed evening discussing about fasting and so much more. You know, there's a huge crisis on the line, and there's a lot of things happening in health. It's not just something now. This is just bringing it to the forefront. I'm going to dive into that in just a little bit. But I thought this was a critical workshop to really help individuals really thrive, especially start getting into 2021 of how to plan, how to prep, and how to do so much more. And I wanted to give you some amazing content that's going to create massive shifts in your life in more ways than you could ever have before. Because let's face it, health is the first of all priorities, and health is the first of all liberties. And the thing is, if when you don't have your health, what do you have, right? And Steve Jobs, right? If you look at Steve Jobs, a guy who was worth, at his time of living, anywhere from 7 to 10 billion dollars. They said today his worth would be over 30 to 40 billion dollars, but yet he's not here to experience it. How much is your health worth to you? And anytime I do a workshop, I'm trying to give you material and information that will create a massive, let's say that together, massive transformation in your life. It's not going to be something small. It's not going to be something that's, just one little thing to add. No, we're talking massive transformation. And this is what fasting can do. To give you a little background, I've been fasting for over 20 years. I've in the last 8 to 10, I've gotten more routine with it, especially in the last few years. I've gotten even more intense with it. What does that mean? Well, I was raised Roman Catholic, so we used to practice fasting during Lent, and so it was on a Friday, sometimes to a Sunday. We would do, maybe sometimes we'll fast on a Friday, Good Friday, and we'll fast all the way in through till Easter came. And so it wasn't like all the time, but it was processes and facts of fasting. Now I incorporate fasting in my life anywhere from once or twice a week. I do intermittent fasting. We'll talk about that. I've been doing that for 10 years. But then there's also daily fast, alternative fast, 3-day fast, 5-day fast. I incorporate many different ones. And sometimes once a year, I'll do anywhere from a 7 to a 10 up to a 15-day fast. This year I did a 9-day fast. And so it's one of the things where I incorporate this in my life for many reasons. And I'm going to share with you why that is. But first, I want to just kind of give you a heads up, what's going on, what are we going to cover today? It's going to be very straightforward. It's basically going to get into what is really fasting. We're going to talk about the science behind it. What is the research that shows that science actually has been proven that fasting can help? I'm going to give you the bold prints. You can go Google those if you want to have more intense information on things. What are the different types of fasting? What is out there that you can utilize? The different ones that are there, is it just the ones you may have heard of? Like how you heard me say intermittent fasting, which is very popular. But are there other ones? What are they, and how can I implement those in my life? Right? That's where we're going to get in today. That's my agenda. So we got a lot of information to get through here tonight. So let's dive in. Now, I said that something has been teaching us of how the health is in America. COVID has been one of the greatest teachers to expose that. If you're looking at it from different eyes, if you're not stuck in the fear of what the media has been pushing and all that's been going on, you can actually really see the numbers and really see how horrible, yes, I'm saying how horrible our healthcare system is here in America. Technically, in holistic world, we don't call it health, we call it sick care, because that's really what it is. There's not a solution. It's more of just masking symptoms for the most part, and allowing you to live life longer with what you have. It's called it's management or co-management of symptoms, and it's not truly addressing the why and the cause behind it. Right? So we when we look at that, you say, how many deaths, at time of this workshop roughly do we have with COVID? And in America, it's around 230,000 deaths. Okay, that's a high number. That's a lot of deaths there. Now, these are fabricated. This is not accurate. I want to be very crystal clear. It has been proven. They were marking deaths that have been people who were going to die, who've been killed, suicide, drug overdose, you name it. If they tested positive, they were considered a COVID death, especially in the state of Illinois. That was very strong. They said this in April. So we know that these numbers aren't accurate. A lot of statisticians and scientists are looking at it and go, this is not an accurate number. They've meddled the data, but I'm going to use this as like it is because I want to reference some studies to bring in perspective. Okay. So the CDC came out and said, hey, actually, we've done our numbers and 6% of those deaths are actually strictly from COVID itself. 94% of the deaths are coming from comorbidities. And they said the average of the comorbidity was 2.3. Okay. So if we do the number, that means out of the 230,000 people that have passed away from COVID, 216,200 had comorbidities of an average of 2.3. Now, what does this mean? Well, from a stat world and a scientist world, they look at this and say, well, COVID could be like the flu. It was a new thing that came in. Bodies weren't used to it. The weak people who had issues, health issues, conditions, things like that, they were taken out. Now, they could have been passing away in 6 months and a year, and if flu may have got them or their health condition, the health deteriorated, it would have just, their body would have given up over a period of time. So there's many factors that come into it. And so, but it talks about how comorbidities, it's massive in America. I mean, here's a stat just to kind of, here's the truth. This is 2019. Okay. This is CDC. This has all come from the Center of Disease and Control. Okay. So heart disease, 647,457 people died last year from heart disease. 599,108 people died from cancer. You take those two numbers, that's 1,250,000 people. It's crazy. You get to the bottom number there, 83,564. What's interesting about these numbers, and I used to teach classes on this when I first started in my career, diabetes now is actually worth more. It costs more per year than heart disease now. As heart disease, and you look at the numbers, you're like, wait a minute, that's 8 times almost of a difference of numbers, but yet cost-wise, diabetes is more expensive now. And so you got diabetes, you got cancer, you got heart disease. Then we take obesity, right? I just did a stat looking last year. 42.4% Americans are obese in some way, shape, or form, which comes out to 140 million people. That's almost half the population. They said by 2030, we'll be 50% obese. Now, what does this all mean? Well, this plays a massive havoc on your health. Obesity alone is related to those 3 diseases right there, right? We have right here over 1.3 million deaths per year, right? That's almost 60 to 70% of all the deaths that you see in America. Well, about 50, 60% of all the deaths in America, give or take, it's like 2.8 to 2.9 million people die per year, roughly on an average. And right off the bat, you got about 1.3, so it's about 40%. Right here, 3 conditions, 40% of the deaths in America right here. Why aren't we, this has been going on for years. Crescitor and Lipitor are not solving heart disease issues. Your cholesterol issues, they look at cholesterol blaming that. It's not that at all. And I have workshops that can, if you're interested, please let me know. I'll be more than happy to share workshops on how the medical system with saturated fats has messed things up, and it's really not that at all. And they have one study that kind of showed a potential correlation, and then all of a sudden, and they backed it all the way through, and now it has no ground whatsoever. But these are things that are going on, and these are critical because this affects your health overall, and it makes you more susceptible to things. It makes you more susceptible to flu, pneumonia, things along that nature, where it can penetrate, affect your health even more. This is why America is seeing what it's seeing. It's because of this, and this is not the conversation many are having. Right? They don't want you to see this. And I say they, mainstream media, the people who fund the mainstream media, and so much more. You're never going to hear about, look at now, they're finally, you've heard on the news, potential vitamin D. They don't tell you how much vitamin D. They don't tell you how much vitamin C, but they shared it about with COVID, right? We've been, in our office, we actually been preaching that. We preach that every year, actually, when it comes to viruses, for all of my existence in business and being a chiropractor. And we were sharing this in H1N1. We're sharing this every time there's a virus. The stuff we share never changes. Why? Because when you're speaking truth in science, nothing is fabricated. There's no agenda. I'm just sharing the truth of what we know and how the body works. And that's why it hasn't changed since. So when you look at this perspective, though, you have to understand this is why we're seeing this issue. Now, this is what inspired me to share fasting. We're going to talk about how fasting can help with all these and more. We're going to get into the bottom line of it, and I'm going to share with you how it can totally transform your life. I have friends colleagues actually, who some of them may have had a heart disease, some of them had cancer, some of them have diabetes, and they use tools of fasting and other things to actually help themselves, their body regenerate and heal itself, so that it can go ahead and rid themselves of these things, of this cancer diagnosis on its own naturally. So very, very powerful stuff. Now, I want to get in some facts of diabetes. You heard me say this. I'm going to be very quick with this. But you figure that in 2012, there was 29.1 million people are diabetic based on the American Diabetic Association. Childhood diabetes, 1.93 out of 1,000 children. In 1980, there was 0 cases of diabetes. Right now, there's 58,000 in 2010. I'm assuming this number has gone up to 75, even up to 90. 2030, over 51.2 million people will have diabetes. They will have diabetes in that state, right? We never talk about obesity here. But by 2050, 1/3 of Americans will be diabetic. That's just astounding numbers, right? In 2050, childhood will have doubled or tripled. So they're saying by 2050, 40 years from now, from 2010, based on that number, they're saying it will double or triple. So they're saying there'll be over 180 to 200,000 kids who are diabetic. I think it's going to be way more than that. This is just getting way out of hand. You have parents who are diabetic genetically; they pass down. And I'm not saying this is caused by genetics, but you're setting them up to the cravings and the conditioning of foods and insulin resistance and so much more. But how does fasting help, right? Let's get right into it. I know this is a little doom and gloom, so I'm going to turn this around pretty quick. Well, there's a rule that states that one who eats less lives longer, and science is actually starting to prove that, and I'm going to share some of that science on how this is true and so much more, okay? But let's get into the basics of fasting. What is fasting? Well, it's simple as you already know fasting, because if you have breakfast, you break the fast. That's why it's called breakfast. But fasting is just not eating. That's basically what it is. And there's different forms of fasting that can allow you to, you don't eat for a certain period of time. And so and there is something called a pseudo fast. We'll get into that and what that means. But basically, it's not eating. You're not putting things into the body. You're not making your digestive system, your body use energy to break down food and absorb the energy for nutrition, for cellular repair, nutrients, all those types of things. You're just not doing any of that. And what that allows is the body, when you are fasting, it gives the body a break so it doesn't have to constantly be working all the time. That is the basics of fasting. There are many more advanced forms. We'll talk a little bit about those, but this is the basics of fasting. It is just giving your body a break and not letting it have to focus on working on breaking down nutrition and energy and those types of things. So I'm going to get into a little bit of the science, and this is going to be more of the benefits of fasting. And the reason why I say this is because when I was doing my research, just to make sure I have, new data, what's new, what's out there, I found multiple resources for each of these things. So it wasn't like one quick study here or there. It's endless studies. There's a lot of them. There's thousands upon thousands of studies about fasting and the benefits to your health. What I recommend, if you're really interested, if you're one of the researcher type and you want to actually see where it comes from in the article, go to PubMed, and then you can just put in fasting and you can put whatever you want. It could be insulin resistance when I get into this. It can be obesity. It can be immune system. It can be brain health. And you'll see endless articles. I mean, there's just so many out there. So there's a lot out there. You can Google these things. Just Google fasting and put whatever else you want next to it. And you can see an article. There'll be a science article or something along there. And it's not just one. There's numerous of these. So I'm sharing that with you to empower you to do your research if you want. It's out there. I've done mine. There's a lot out there on it. Usually if it's like one source, I could share it. I'll put it on here. But when I had 5, 10, one of them, the first one I'm going through, had about 36 different research articles on it. I was like, kind of hard to put all those on there. So what's the science, right? So one of the biggest things that, and I'm going to share into what insulin resistance is in a minute. But it reduces insulin resistance. It makes your body more insulin sensitive. Now, this is critical for your health on a metabolic process because insulin resistance has been known, and I'll show a graph after this to kind of tie it together. But insulin resistance is the main factor to diabetes, Alzheimer's, heart disease, cancer, metabolic syndrome, obesity, and many other things. Insulin resistance causes massive hormone imbalancing and so much more. And there are many things you can do. Nutrition-wise, exercise-wise, sleep-wise, and so much more. And I've tested each of these out biohacking myself to see how each of those can benefit me in one way or another. So I've done sleep and measured insulin. I've done it with meditation. I've done it with breath work. I've done it with burst training or exercise, different types of exercise. I've done it in different diets, different specific diets, keto, to just name one, paleo, to name another. Done carnivore testing, different things. I never stuck to carnivore, but the carnivore diet is just basically anything animal-based only. And seeing what it's done in my insulin. So I've done different factors to test things out just to see. And so it's fascinating, but fasting is the most potent thing you can do to balance your insulin resistance. It's unbelievably massive. I love it. I recommend fasting for everyone that deals with this. If you have diabetes, if you have osteoporosis, if you have cancer, heart disease, if you have metabolic syndrome, if you're obese, if you can't put off weight, if you have foggy brain, not enough energy, fasting helps. It works wonders because of insulin resistance and how it makes your body more sensitive. And again, I'm going to come back to this in a minute. It's been shown to reduce inflammation massively because think about it. When you're not eating, you're giving your body the chance to repair and heal. Okay, so that's the basic of fasting. You don't eat and you give your body more time to heal and repair, because when the body is not working on breaking down food for energy, then it takes energy to find what cells need to be repaired, what systems need to be repaired. And they've done studies with C-reactive protein, which is a measurement in blood for inflammation. It's not the greatest, but it gives you some ideas. And what they found out is it actually decreases when someone's fasting. And so there's so many factors to how just fasting will help with inflammation, joint pain, muscle aches, healing and repair. Fasting actually helps you repair and heal faster after a workout. It helps heal from traumas and issues because, again, you're not taking the energy of the body and we call it, in a chiropractic, we call this the innate intelligence. But you're not taking that energy to focus on breaking down food. You're actually giving it an opportunity to heal, grow, and do the repair and do the things it needs to. Cellular cleanup and so much more. And so this is where inflammation will decrease. This is also why when it comes to COVID, fasting may be one of the better things to do for you, because when you have, and like when you're sick or not feeling well, the thing is you create this cytokine storm. And this is which creates massive inflammation in the body. And there's some studies that have shown that COVID, the clotting factors in the lungs, doesn't affect everyone the same way. But they did this in Italy, and they were giving aspirin. The president, when he got it, he was taking aspirin, but he took something called dexamethasone or something like that. And I'm not pronouncing this right. Steroid to help actually decrease the inflammation in the lungs specifically. And they use this. There's a doctor in Texas that has been helping people. He's up, I think he has over 100% cases, success rate, no deaths whatsoever. And he's worked with the most elderly to regular people. And he does a couple different things, but one of them was the dexamethasone to help decrease the inflammation in the lungs. But fasting can do that at a natural basis, and it's going to help with your immune system, which we'll dive in a little later. Research has shown time and time again, I do this for neurohacks and biohacking, but boosts brain function. There's actually a BDNF. Now, there's only a few things that actually stimulate BDNF. BDNF is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Okay, so what that means is, fancy name, but what it means is just helps with building the neurons of the brain back. So you're helping keeping your brain young. And so BDNF is very important. I'm very passionate about it because chiropractic is one of the only things that actually boosts BDNF massively. Because remember, if you're a patient, you've heard me say this many times, the brake pedal system, right? The brake pedal system. I keep it very simple. I don't like to go too far in depth with brake pedal and gas pedal, just because there's a lot of science, there's a lot of things to teach behind it. But when you're in a state of brake pedal, you actually stimulate BDNF, and it helps the brain say, hey, if I need to repair, right? Because growth and development, if I need to repair things or help enhance the brain, I'm going to do that. And so that's where chiropractic helps. Coffee helps if you have good quality, organic, high elevation rate, wet hold, no mycotoxins at all, and very low acidic coffee. A lot of factors to this, a lot of parameters to this. But it helps with cognitive function. It can help with certain people, can actually boost BDNF. But another one is fasting. Fasting works wonders on this, and it's massively beneficial for you. And I love it. Sometimes I do fasting when I'm writing my book. Some people say, well, how did you write your book in like 23 hours? Because I'll track how much time I spent to write a book. My first book was around 27, 28, and then my second one was around 23. And what I do is one of the things I'll do at times, not always, but at times, I'll use fasting because it enhances my cognitive function, my focus, and my concentration. Fasting increases your growth hormone. Now, growth hormone is a hormone in the body that's massively designed for healing and repair, building up muscle tissue, and so much more. I have educated, I used to take on private clients for nutrition counseling, goal setting when it comes to nutrition, lifestyle transformations, and things like that. And I would use fasting for those who wanted to put on weight. And a lot of times I get the same look like, Doc, how am I going to put on weight, muscle mass in this process when you're talking about growth hormone and things like that? And so what would happen is I would tell them one of the things that fasting does is it massively boosts your growth hormone. Okay. Now they'll be like, well, what does that mean? Well, growth hormone means you're going to recover faster. You're going to build more muscle tissue. You're going to heal faster. Your strength's going to go up. You put on muscle mass. And so they're like, okay, but I don't get how, but I'm not eating. I need calories. And I was like, just trust the process. 4 or 5 months later, they put on weight that they wanted to. I've done this many times. I've tested this out many different times. I actually, when I fast and I do my 3 or 5 or 7 day fasts, I will lift heavier in my weights when I'm weight training more because I know I have growth hormone in me that's increasing. And so when I do that, I'm actually putting up more weight than I normally do. And then the next week when I retest, it's like a 5 to sometimes 7% increase in my weight or my reps when it comes, because it's depending on what I'm doing. I don't do a lot of heavy lifting maxing wise anymore like I used to when I was younger, but I do a lot more repetitions. Like, let's say if I'm going to bench 225, I want to know how many reps can I do that at? And then I'll monitor that. And the most I've ever seen from a week time frame was about a 20-something% increase. So it can definitely work. I'm not saying I got that every week. I'm just looking at the biggest gain I had in a week when I was using fasting as a parameter to this. So I map out fasting, and I've used it for many different tools, but it works. I mean, if you're a male, if you fast, 3-day fast minimum, growth hormone increases by 1,700 to 2,000%. You can't beat that. Or if you're a female, it's around 1,300%. I mean, you just can't beat that. That is free. It is natural, and you're getting what your body needs, right? So this is a great way to utilize growth hormone in your life and many more. So again, can help with that. I'm going to talk a little bit more about telomeres, so I'm going to keep it simple. But telomeres are part of the chromosome, and what it does is they found out research that showed that the longer your telomeres are, the longer you live. The shorter the telomeres are, the less life you have, or the less of the length of life or the quality of life you're going to have too, because once it starts to shorten, you're going to have more issues in health. And I'm going to dive into that a little bit again, so I'm not going to go too much into that one. I have another slide all dedicated to that, and we'll get into that in just a couple. Fasting is anti-cancer. It is a natural anti-cancer factor. When you fast, you increase something in the immune system called autophagy. And now autophagy, what it is it's a fancy term that just means cell death. And what it'll do is it'll turn the cells, when they're time to die, it'll turn the signal for them to shut down. Okay, this is when we talk about fasting and focusing on repair and healing the body. That's what happens. Cancer is the opposite. It's when the autophagy process is not activated, or it's malfunctioning, or sometimes just goes crazy. And that's where the cancer factor can build in. This is why all of us have cancer in us, but your body has a way of cleaning it up. Now, it's just making sure that the cleaning up process is better than the creation phase. And so it's one of the things where fasting can help with that. Now cancer has many reasons why it exists. But one of the factors that we looked at is research has shown is it's very metabolic in many ways. Not all of cancers are metabolic issues. Some of them can be hormones. Some of them can be toxicity levels. I think it's all three to be examples. Some are emotional, but a lot of these play a role. And so the key thing is when you're fasting, you're decreasing the sugar in the body, making yourself more insulin sensitive. Now, there's science behind this, guys. This is not me just creating a theory. And doctors, unfortunately, don't know these things, or else they'd be utilizing this. But the problem is there's no money in this. And I like to keep things straight. I don't sugarcoat things. I'm just being straightforward. A normal cell in your body that's healthy has 2 receptors. to pick up on sugar. So that means if a sugar's there, it ties onto the receptor and it gets utilized and goes into the cell and gets used for energy, right? A cancer cell actually has 7 times more. So that means it has 14 sugar receptors. Okay, 14. What does that mean? The more sugar you're in, the more you're feeding cancer. And this is why fasting is actually massive when it comes to cancer and helping fight that type. It can be a huge support to that. You can Google fasting and cancer, and you'll see a ton of info on it. Then we have, I talked a little bit about this already, but boosting your immune system. One of the things that the research has shown, now, if you're looking at boosting your immune system, this is why whenever I'm under the weather, I don't eat. I go to a strict fast, doesn't matter. If you have a fever, fast. Do not eat because you're going to overload the liver. What you want is the body to be focusing on what it needs to do. This last year, I had one of the more severe sinus infections. I usually get one once every 18 months, give or take. And this year, this one hit me hard, and I know why. I have a lot of data and tracking, and I took my eyes off it for a little bit. And what happened was, it just started to decline, and all of a sudden, I had a massive sinus infection. I did a 9-day fast. I stopped eating immediately once I didn't feel good, and all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, I need to focus. I need to center myself. I need to go ahead and let my body do its thing. I rebounded so quick, even with that severe, because normally it would last. If I had a severe one, which I haven't had one like this in about 10 to 12 years, normally what will happen is I'm usually under the weather. Back in the day, like when I was in high school, it'd be like a week to 2 weeks of dealing with a sinus infection. Nowadays, normally it's like if I do get one, it's like 1 day, maybe half a day, 6 hours. But this one was more intense, and it was about 3.5, 4 days of just not doing good, having the sinus headache, having the getting up and the throbbing, pulsing pain, the congestion, all that stuff. But what I do is I'll fast, and the reason why is because in 3 days of fasting, with no eating at all for 3 days, what happens on a stem cell level is you create a whole entire new army of immune system. Because what the stem cells do is they fire up, and they all of a sudden now they're going to create a whole new baseline for your immune system. So you're enhancing your immune system literally, and you're also creating a whole new army of them. And so that's the beauty, and the science has shown this time and time again. And this is why I utilize fasting for many purposes, but also to help increase my immune system, not only to fight off things, but more importantly, the autophagy part, right? Cell death. Also to make sure I'm eating up inflammation, because your immune system is what actually decreases inflammation in the body, which also is what's going to eat up cells, cellular debris, things that are not there, get rid of toxins and things like that. Another one is called reduced oxidative stress. Now, oxidative stress is the chemical term for how your body responds to stress. Chiropractic has been shown time and time again to do that. We can actually look at it from blood level. There were studies that showed from a chiropractic adjustment, does it decrease the oxidative stress in the blood? And it does. It's cool stuff. But fasting will help with that because you're helping, again, enhance the repair systems of the body. So the body now can look at where these oxidative stressors are that cause aging, that cause damage to your arteries, that cause damage to your cells, and it can get rid of these a lot easier so that it can help the body repair and growth more. Antioxidants are really good for this in this process too, but these are just things you want to be utilizing. I've already said this before, but cellular healing is massive. Prevention of Alzheimer's has been shown. What it will do is, again, with the brain boosting and the BDNF, right? It also can help potentially with plaque removal or decreasing plaque, or helping with neurogenesis in the brain, helping refire the connections so that the brain can stay younger. If you have, you got to understand, if you're in the stages of dementia already, there's a process it's a very long time for you to get to that state. So there's going to be a process and a journey for you to slow that down and probably turn that around. But fasting can help prevent for sure. I've already talked a little bit about why I fast when it comes to writing books. One of the big reasons is my focus and concentration. I also fast for spiritual purposes. So when I want to connect to my intuition and the universe or God or whatever you want to call it, I use fasting for that because it makes it easier, because I'm more connected with myself and my intuition, and be able to connect and just sit and go deeper into my meditations and the work that I do. I've tested this for years. When I fast, I get better sleep. When I fast, it's deep quality sleep. I can sleep for 6 hours, and it's the equivalent of 8.5 to 10 hours, based on the quality that I'm getting from it. And it's really, really cool. So this will help you in your sleep. It helps you get deeper sleep. More importantly, it gets you into the more deep restorative sleep because your body is growing and developing better. And so it can focus on the growth, repair, the healing, and so much more because it doesn't have so much energy. Food has to break down to absorb energy. So these are the things. What I recommend. Now, I said the science behind fasting. I didn't give resources. Here's the thing. You can Google. All I want you to do, any of these titles, all you have to do is type in fasting, insulin resistance, fasting, inflammation, fasting, brain health, or brain health, I would say, fasting, growth hormone, fasting, telomeres, fasting, cancer, fasting immune system, fasting oxidative stress, fasting, cellular health, fasting, Alzheimer's, fasting, focus, fasting, quality sleep. Another thing I found out, which is very cool, is it improves the microbiome. So you can do fasting microbiome. Now, research has shown massively that the microbiome is affected by fasting in many ways. But one of them is most of our diets, not everyone, but most diets are fed with carbs and sugar. Now, carbs and sugar feed bad bacteria in the gut. It feeds parasites, it feeds funguses, it feeds yeast, it feeds a ton of stuff in there. Now, when you fast, you stop the feeding process of carbs and sugar to the bad bacteria. And when you do this over repetitively pounds of time, the bad bacteria starts to it dies off. And when you start to practice fasting long-term, 6 months, a year in, what ends up happening is you can repair the gut. You can heal the gut, leaky gut. You can repair it from fasting. If you don't know what leaky gut is, I highly recommend researching it. Most people have it in some way, shape, or form. Fasting helps with that. But it also helps with the gut itself, the bacteria in there. It helps create a better ecosystem in your gut, which is going to play a role on your mood, your behavior, your brain health, your immune system, your heart health, your energy levels. It's going to play effectors on your skin, and so much more. Microbiome plays a huge role. There's so much research on that. So these are things that you can do. Like I said, just take the word fasting, add in the back end, so like brain function or microbiome or quality or fasting and sleep, and that way you'll see how it proves. There's tons of research, guys. I'm telling you, there's multiple articles. The insulin resistance one alone had over 67 resources. 67. Inflammation, 38. Brain function, 52. So, I mean, I can go on and on. The immune system boosting. There's many different things of how it boosts the immune system. I saw 20 articles alone. So there's things that you can do to utilize and see if you want the research on this. Now, I said telomeres. I want to break this down pretty quick of what really are telomeres. So if you look on the bottom right here, you have this image. And there's a couple parts to this image, but if you see the yellow part, that's the end of the chromosome. That's where your telomeres are. And the length of that yellow tells us how long your life can be, and so forth. And research has shown this, and they've looked at it, and there's so many things. There's new research into telomeres. You can actually do testing on your length, where your telomere length is, and there's so much more. But with this, one of the things is, basically simple. The shorter the telomeres, the shorter the life, and the longer the life. Simple as that, right? But they've done a study on fasting and telomeres, and this is one study I pulled. Then research shows individuals with short telomeres who fasted ended up living longer than the length of their telomeres. Think about that for a second. I'm going to say it one more time. They did a research study, and they found out that individuals who already had short telomeres, which means their life was going to be shorter, and they predicted the age and the time and how long they had left. And then when they fasted, they actually lived longer than the prediction of the telomeres. So what it meant is that the fasting can help lengthen the telomeres and allow you to live a longer life. This is where the whole entire quote of the one who eats less lives longer. This is where the research came from. This is why that statement's there. And it's been true. The one who eats less lives longer. It's been proven. And this is one of the science. I'm just sharing one article when it comes into that. Now, I mentioned insulin resistance, and I know this image is a little blurry. Didn't know it was. It looked clear when I put it up here. But so long story short, the insulin resistance is when you get insulin resistance when you fire insulin too much over a period of time. Now, a lot of people think insulin only happens when you have too high of sugar. But insulin can happen when you don't have enough sodium in the body. Insulin can happen when you don't have enough minerals. Insulin can happen when you have too much toxins and XYZ. I mean, what it will do is insulin is about an emergency state. It's more of a protection state. How do we have to store? How do we have to repair or, help with the body to get through things? Now, insulin resistance shows up in many ways. The biggest one is someone who's hangry, right? All this new term now. Oh, hangry. Yeah, I'm hangry. I'm hangry. I'm hangry. Well, no, you're insulin resistant. That's actually what you are. Because you have constant hunger. You have to eat it all the time at a certain point. You have inability to lose weight, right? I've been doing everything right, Doc. I've been doing all the work that you tell me to do. I've been doing it for 6 months, a year, and I still can't lose weight. I'm only at this pounds, or I'm only at this matter. Well, you have insulin resistance. And the longer the insulin resistance has been there, the harder it is to clear. You have to understand, you have 75 trillion cells in your body. If 20 of those are insulin resistant, 20 trillion that is, it's going to be some work. And you have to trust the process. You got to keep breaking it down, right? Cravings for sugar, right? Migraine, aches, pains, things like that, fatigue, upper abdominal obesity, increased fat storage. You got high cholesterol and triglycerides, low thyroid or thyroid issues, estrogen dominance, polycystic ovarian syndrome. You got andropause, things like erectile dysfunction, low libido, women and men, loss of strength and stamina, right? Because it decreases human growth hormone, which decreases also the strength side of things. Baldness, thinning of hair, man boobs, as they say, fat accumulation around the waist. I mean, the hormone imbalance on many different levels. And so insulin resistance plays a huge role on your life. And this is why I said it's a metabolic condition that affects many different things. Polycystic ovarian syndrome, it mimics low thyroid, it has PMS, get acne, facial hair, infertility, hair loss. I mean, I can go on and on and on and on. And there's more than this. There's heart disease, there's brain issues, dementia, diabetes, and so much more. And these are just to name a few, guys. So this is where fasting can really play a huge role in your life. It can kind of change away some of these processes and actually reset things. And it doesn't cost you a thing. It's absolutely free. It's absolutely free. And you can start that process today, right? So I want to share with you guys really quick. I hope you're getting a little excited as much as I am on this. I want to share with you guys some of the fasting processes. What are some out there? And I'm going to explain them all right here. And then we'll dive in some of the basic ones that I'd recommend that I would say to do. Now, the main one and the most popular one that people know of is intermittent fasting. I probably on a weekly basis to every other week to every month. I'll always have someone say, "Hey, Doc, you ever heard of intermittent fasting? What do you think of it?" And it's one of the things where I'm happy to hear that it's out. I'm happy to hear that it's there and people are utilizing it. It's great. Some people are like, I use it all the time, works wonders. This became more of a fad, unfortunately. There's not a lot of people do it. Sometimes they'll do it on and off. Intermittent fasting is a way that you want to do on a consistent basis. It's a very long, so all the benefits we're talking about with fasting, intermittent fasting, if you just do that alone, you're not going to get as much great results. You're not maximizing the benefits of fasting because you're really, and depending on the research, depending on your digestive system, depending on how well your bowels move, how well the stomach acid is in your stomach, how well bile gets in and all this, there's so many factors that can interrupt this because when you look at fasting, on average, the human being has about 12 hours before things get to the colon. Once you get to the colon, you're just absorbing water, nutrients, and that's it, right? The small intestines of what breaks things down, absorbs through nutrition and all that. That's part of the digestive process. So they tell you it takes about 12 hours at least. Now, some people can take up to 24 hours before they get to the colon, but some it's around 12 hours to 24. It all depends on how well your nervous system is functioning because the nervous system plays a role in the digestive system. How much are you stuck in gas pedal? For patients, that's, in other words, that's part of your sympathetic nervous system. When you're more sympathetic, digestive system doesn't work as well. We just make it simple by saying stuck in stress. Your brain's wired and stuck in stress. And so that can play a role. So that's why intermittent fasting, I love intermittent fasting. I use it for a tool when I'm not fasting. And I also use it to train the body to be conditioned to fast. But when it comes to just being the end all be all, this is great, but it's not going to get you the long because there's too many factors that play a role. And I like to know exactly what's going on. But intermittent fasting is great. I have a whole slide on how to do it and the different processes of it and so much more. The second type of fast is a water fast. This got really popular in chiropractic like a couple of years ago. There was chiropractors doing 7 days, 10 days, 11 days, 15 days. I have a chiropractic colleague who did a 34-day water fast. And it was like all about who can do 20 days and 30 days. And that's great. But comes a point where it's not as beneficial. I practice water fasting a lot. But I do it more in short term because I could tell by my body when, if I'm doing it one day here and a one day here, it's a nice little reset for the body. If I'm not feeling myself and I'm feeling stressed and all these other things, I'll do like a 3 or 5 day to help. But basically what the water fast is, it's just water. That's all you're drinking. Water. You can have some green tea. You could do a little bit of coffee. I don't recommend it. I recommend teas just because you want more natural caffeine that doesn't take so much from the body, energy-wise and so forth. And you got to also remember coffee is an exogenous adrenaline. So basically, exogenous means external, coming from the outside. And you want your own mechanisms to work on their own. I mean, green tea and stuff like that has caffeine, but it's a lot less and so forth. And if you're going to drink green tea, just because I like to share as much as I can, make sure it's it's organic, and it's come from the United States. Research has shown that green tea leaves actually absorb heavy metals. I think it was lead and arsenic or lead and something else. Don't quote me on it, but you can Google this. And in China, if you look at their pollution in air, a lot of that's there. And so it absorbs a lot in the green tea. So you don't want to be consuming that. But water fasts are great. It's one of my favorites. I use these often. This is the one I do most of the time when it comes to things. Next one's a bone broth fast. So it's fasting. All you're doing is drinking bone broth. You can buy it at the store. You can make it yourself. It's real simple and easy to do. But bone broth fasting is just basically that. It's the same as a water fast, but instead of just drinking water, you're also doing bone broth. And it gives you some nutrients. It gives you a little bit of stuff. You're still in a fast per se, but it's nice to consume. This is a little easier of a fast if you're concerned about fasting, and you're still getting good nutrients and collagen and fat and all that good stuff in your body as you're doing a bone broth. It also helps heal the gut. So it's a great gut healer. Sometimes I'll have people do these things to heal their gut because you're also fasting will help heal the gut. Bone broth fasting will help it heal even more. So it's one of those good things that you can utilize. There's fat fasting. Now, fat fasting is very similar to bone broth fasting. It's just a little different. It's kind of straightforward though. So I love about these things. It's just consuming fat. Now, what does that mean? Butter, cacao butter, avocados, trying to think of some other just pure fats. You can do bone broth. You can do sometimes what I've done before in some of my days of biohacking with this. We would do bone broth and then put ghee and butter. Well, we'll put ghee after the bone broth and blend it and drink it. So we were doing because we wanted to add more fat into the bone broth so that we can get more enhancing fat into our body. So my body can shift its gears into producing fat more, using it for energy. But it's usually, you can do coconut, right? Coconut oil, you can put that in, you can make fat coffee. It's kind of similar to bulletproof coffee, a little different, but you can do coconut oil in your coffee and blend it. You can do butter in your coffee and blend it. You can do it in teas. You can do it in black tea. Pu'er tea is what I recommend when it comes to that, because it's similar to coffee in some ways, not taste-wise, but just consistency and so forth when you mix the fat. So there's many things you can do to truly transform your health when it comes to these things. And fat fasting is one of those things. Now, pseudo fast, you can actually, or fast mimicking, which means, now a lot of people do this when you get a stomach surgery, lap band, or, things like that, where they put you on a diet. And it's sad, people who go through this, they say they always give credit to the surgery, but they don't ever talk about the diet they have to consume. Right? Because when you go on that surgery, they tell you to eat only 500 calories a day. Now, pseudo fasting is 500 calories a day. It's the same thing. So what they don't tell you, and the research has shown, they've done a study where they've taken people who've done, stomach reductions, lap band surgeries, things like that. And then they took people and didn't do it, but they just gave them the diet. What do you think the results were? They were the same. And this is why I'm not a fan of the whole stomach thing. And there's many health issues that come with it down the road in the long run. And I know many people that have done it. And I've had patients who have done it. And that's okay. It's their choice. And that's what I care about. My job is just to educate as much as I can, or that I'm allowed to. And so, but what they've done, the pseudo fasting is a diet of 500 calories or less. So this can be like, you want to eat a little bit, but you got to make sure that you eat no more than 500 calories. So it could be like a small little salad. You can snack on vegetables at a certain time of the day. You can calculate this in however you want. And it will be a pseudo fast where it's mimicking fasting, but you're just putting calories in. This works. It takes a little longer and it works, and it helps. There's alternate day fast where you choose every other day, similar to what we talked about above. There's also a dry fast, which I don't recommend. This is where like people who practice Ramadan, where they don't eat from the sunrise to sunset. They don't drink water from sunrise to sunset. I'm not a fan of dry fasting at all because you need water to really push things through. And when you're fasting and your body starts to go on cellular healing, cellular repair, your lymphatics get strained, the liver starts to increase things, and you want to make sure you got water pushing stuff through and cycling and cleansing things so you can be better and feel better. So I'm not a big fan of dry fasting at all. I've never done it. I've done it a couple times in my life, and I just don't like the way I feel. You get tired, you get fatigued. I can do a water fast, and you're going to think I'm high on caffeine. You'll think I had like 6 cups of coffee when I do my water fast and so forth. So this is where I kind of stand with that in my experiences and the science, because when I'm sharing some of these science research and the numbers and percentages, like let's say the immune system boost, water fast in 3 days, bone broth in about 5, fat fast in about 5, intermittent fasting, not getting there. So you can see why I favor water fasting more than anything else when it comes to these things. And then last but not least, a juice fast. Now, juice fast can fall into a pseudo fast because it's as long as it's 500 calories or less. A lot of times when people juice, they put fruit in there. Well, you're going to throw off the fasting process altogether. So this is a juice fast of vegetables only. Okay, that's what I would recommend. So like a good celery, if you follow Medical Medium, you fell into the fad of a lot of people were doing the celery juice and they're, oh my goodness, and all these benefits. And it's great. Don't get me wrong. It does help. I just don't like fads. And I've seen so much of it in nutrition. I've been in the industry for 20 years, and I can't tell you how many times. There's at least 5 fads a year. But when it comes to juicing, I don't just recommend celery juice, even though it's really good for you. Carrots are phenomenal. They're good for alkalizing the body, plus a bunch of other things, and antioxidants, and so much more. So I always recommend a celery, carrot, and then you can do like a cucumber, a nice watery type of vegetable. And that's just a great blend. Put a little beets in there to detoxify and cleanse the blood. Beets are for the blood. And you just, I would do like a little quarter of a beet. You could do 4 or 5 stalks of celery, 5 to 10 carrots, and then half a cucumber, and you have a very nice, very clean tasting, and make sure it's all organic, but a very clean tasting, juice. So that's my tidbit on there, but that you can use a juice fast to be pure juicing. I've done a 21-day juice fast before. No fruit, just vegetables. I literally was making salads. It was so funny. I would take a salad, romaine lettuce, a whole head, juice it. 10 carrots, juice it. I would do a whole cucumber, juice it. A whole stalk of celery, juice it. It was over a liter of juice. And that would be my meal. And I was like, there we go. This is my salad, just dry in the juice instead. And I did it for 21 days. It was phenomenal. I loved it. And so, again, as I learned these things, and that was over 10 years ago I did that. When I learned these things, I wanted to test them out. I wanted to see how they worked. And I tested it on myself, and I tested with other people. And then once I started seeing some results, I would work with patients on it to help them in their processes who was willing to do it. So again, many different ways and types of fasting, and so much more would go with that. But the big one I wanted to share is intermittent fasting, because this is one that many, many, many people have heard, some do, and so forth. And there's many forms of intermittent fasting, okay? I'm going to keep it very simple. What you see on this chart, what you see on this graph is that you got 16 hours where you don't eat whatsoever. Sleep is included, okay? And then you have an 8-hour window of eating. So that is it. It's simple as that. If you want to make it even more extreme, you can go 18 hours of fasting to 6 hours of eating. I have some patients who do 22 and 2. I like the 22-2. You eat 1 meal a day. I know a medical doctor, he came out with a book, Plant Paradox. I forgot his name. Gunthrop, I think, is the doctor. He's a guy who ended up losing massive amount of weight just eating once a day. And he cycles it through 6 months out of the year. And it's really, really great. This is taking things to the extreme. You'll get a little bit more health benefits in that when you eat 1 meal a day. But intermittent fasting is a great tool to utilize every single day. But it's also great because it teaches your body to shift slowly over to fat burning. It takes time. It's going to take a lot longer than normal. Fasting, you can turn that around a lot quicker. But with intermittent fasting, it's going to take longer, but you're giving body a chance to adapt to it. And so this is a tool, and the reason why I'm sharing this with you and talking about this one primarily is because this is what I utilize if you're going to fast properly. The thing is, a lot of times people want to do a one-day fast. I've seen people do 3-day fasts, right? And they get all excited. I've run a lot of programs in my life with fasting being a protocol to things. And people feel great, and they go, oh my God, I love it. I can fast. Oh my God, I did a 2-day. Oh my goodness, I did a 3-day. I'm killing this fasting. It is easy. And I'm always like, just wait. If you didn't train properly, in about a month to 2 months in, you're going to hate fasting, you're going to have headaches, you're not going to feel good, and so much more. And the reason why is you didn't train the body properly to burn fat, to turn your metabolism to, instead of being heavily on just carbs or sugar, it's going to focus, you've trained it to be fat adaptive is what we call it. I've gotten to a place in my life where I can fast at any time. I can stop and fast and have no issues. And the reason why is I've learned and I've trained my body over the years to be fat adaptive as much as carb adaptive. And you can do the same thing. But you want to do intermittent fasting for some time, and you start with the 16 to 8, right? And then you start to see how you feel for a little bit, a couple weeks in. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to go 18 to 6. Then I'm going to go 20 to 4. Then I'm going to go 22 to 2. Then I'm just going to do one meal a day. And once you can handle one meal a day and you feel perfectly fine, and I notice I'm not putting a time on this. It's up to you to where you can get to that point. Then you go, I'm going to try 24, see how it goes. Then go back to one meal a day, right? You can, and then you can maybe go to maybe 24, 22 and 22 hours of eating and 22 hours of maybe 20 hours of non-eating and 4 hours, whatever you want to pick and choose, but choose it. And then go back to a day and see how you feel of fasting. And then go back to eating. And then go back to another day. I recommend at least 3. And once you get to the day 3, third time of fasting in a day, water fast, fat, bone broth fast, juice fat, doesn't matter. And you feel good and you notice the energy stayed up, you stayed clear, you had high energy, you can work out and do all those other things, then you can test a 2-day, right? And see how you feel. See how your energies are. See how you feel when you go to work out. You should have energy. You shouldn't get tired. If you're feeling a little fatigued, you're feeling run down, not ready, back up. Find where you get that happy point. You got to be really well aware of your body and know what's going on. When I first did, I think it was a 6-day bone broth fast. I think it was like 6 years ago, 7 years ago. I think it was 7 years ago. I did a 6-day bone broth fast. What ended up happening is I literally thought I was dying. What happened was I felt good for the day, but I went for a run that night. I went to go do I normally did a 1.5 mile, 2 mile run. I literally thought my body was dying. I was so fatigued. I didn't have the energy. And this is what I mean by prepping. Now, I've been fasting before. I do a lot of intermittent fasting, but I didn't prep my body for a 5-day or 6-day fast. And so I didn't eat for the first 24 hours. I'm going for a run. And I didn't work out for the next 2 days. And I went to try running. I went to go do another run because I was just trying to, just do something. And I was exhausted. Sleeping was phenomenal. I was more balanced. My meditations are great. After about day 3, day 4, I felt a lot better. But it was one of the things where I was looking forward to getting back into eating and getting back in my routine. But that was the only time I ever experienced that, because since then, when I fast, lots of energy. I fasted 3 days in a row and phenomenal. Had a lot of energy. I did a 36-hour fast and I worked out twice in that 36 hours and I felt absolutely amazing. And so there's once you do it right, this is the things that it just becomes enhancing, because my body's taking energy now from fat rather than sugar, and it's utilizing it to get back in balance and thrive the way it needs to. So that's why I wanted to break this down a little bit for you guys, because it's a great tool, but it's utilizing how it needs to. Here's some benefits of bone broth fasting. You guys can read these here. I talked a little bit about them, like leaky gut, helps with inflammation, muscle and joint pain, infections, mineral consumption, helps with digestion, smooth skins, helps to repair bones, promotes good sleep, just to name a few things. So there's a lot of bone broths out there. I recommend the brand Epic is really good. Kettle and Fire is another good one. If you're not going to make it yourself. If you want to make it yourself, guys, it's so easy, especially if you have an Instapot or a pressure cooker. You can make bone broth, unbelievable tasting bone broth, in like 2 hours. And it's not hard to do. You roast the bones. You get grass-fed, pasture-raised, organic bones. I recommend all 3 of those: pasture-raised, organic, grass-fed bones. Okay. Most of the time, I think Whole Foods has grass-fed bones. You may be able to find, but if not, they have them online at certain stores like freshpicks.com if you're near Illinois. There's other companies out there, but you can find them online. You can buy them now. They're frozen. They ship them. And what you do is you thaw them out. You put them in the oven for about 30 to 45 minutes. You want to roast them so it gets more of a flavor out of them. And then you put them in the Instapot with a little apple cider vinegar, some carrots if you want, some onions, mushrooms, herbs, whatever you want to put in there, garlic. And then you go ahead and you put it in high pressure, 2 hours. All of a sudden, you take those out, drain everything, and you have amazing, beautiful, tasty bone broth. And you have that for as long as you need. And usually my pressure cooker makes about 4 to 5 liters of bone broth. And my wife and I, we have half a freezer of bones. So we use this a lot. It's really great. The health benefits are unreal. So I kind of already explained how to fast properly, but one of the things is you want to start slow. Just a fresh reminder. You want to start with intermittent fasting, 16 hours off, 8 on. The way I usually recommend, that's a lot easier for people, is you eat a breakfast, you have a heavy lunch, don't eat dinner. You can kind of get through dinner. You can kind of push through at the night of not eating, and it usually makes it a little easier. The reason why, because most of the time, if you think about it, if you have to eat lunch and dinner, you don't have breakfast. When you wake up, you're kind of used to breakfast. You may be a little sluggish in the morning because you're not used to it. So I usually recommend the flip side: have breakfast, have a lunch, heavy lunch, and then don't eat anything till the next morning, and make sure it's 16 hours. So if you have lunch at 12, you're not going to be eating dinner until 4 or 5. And that way you give your body enough time to adapt. I would do this for at least a couple weeks and see how you feel in the process. And then remember, after 2 to 3 weeks, you can start to focus on shortening up the hours of eating to where you can get to 1 a day eating. And usually I recommend anywhere for a month or 2 of practicing this before you start doing a 1-day fast. The reason why I do it this long and make it that process is because I want to make sure you do this right. I want to make sure that you're not stressing the body, because you can stress the body when you don't fast properly. And so I want to make sure that you do that. So that's what I usually recommend. And then from there, pick your poison. Shouldn't say pick your poison. Pick your method that you want. Bone broth. Is it fat fasting? Is it a juice fast? Is it a pseudo fast? Is it a water fast? Pick what works for you, because it's absolutely going to be beneficial for your life. And then just stick with that one for the time being. Practice that for a little bit. Once you get to a day fast, use it for a little bit. Do a water, see how it goes. Do a bone broth, see how it goes. Which one you like more, go with it. It's not about which one matters. For me, I did bone broth because it was getting popular, and I was like, in the holistic world and I was like, I'm going to try bone broth fasting. I love bone broth, so let's try that. And after a while, my body just doesn't accept bone broth. It's too fatty for me for some weird reason. Well, I have some science behind it, but so I was like, I don't know. I like it, but it's not for me. And then I was like, I'm gonna try water fast. Not a lot of people are doing it yet. It's not as popular in the holistic world. So I'm like, I'm just gonna try it out anyhow. And I loved it. It works wonders for me. And now it's all over the place. Everyone talks about water fasting and the benefits of it. At least in the holistic world, they are. So that's there. Are there any concerns with fasting? Not really. The only concern is if you're diabetic, you want to work with someone like myself, someone who knows how to work with you, especially if you're taking. So if you're diabetic, I've worked with people with fasting if they're diabetic. If you take insulin, that becomes a whole different issue. That becomes more of an issue now. And you need to work with a health professional who knows how to handle and give you criteria and mechanisms and measuring techniques and all these different things that come into place to make sure we're monitoring properly so we can make sure that we're giving the body what it needs. But if you have diabetes itself, there is work that we have to do also. It's a slower process. So things with heart disease or cancer, it's a slower process because there's factors that can throw off the systems. We want to make sure we help with that. But I want to share that anyone can do this. Adults, children, everyone benefits. And so, again, it's one of the things that can really help transform your life. And I highly, highly recommend you implementing fasting in some way, shape, or form. I hope I hit the mark on everything here. I presented what fasting is. I presented the science behind fasting, the benefits of it, how the different types of it, and how you can implement in your life. If I missed something or you will have more questions on fasting, please email me at drvic@visitthewellnesspath.com. I'll be more than happy to answer any of those questions whatsoever. Just shoot them over to me and I'll get back to you guys on those. But I want to appreciate you guys being on here. Fasting is something, when you look at the stats and you hear about heart disease, you hear about cancer, you hear about diabetes, like, well, that's not going to be me. I'm healthy, or I do this. You have to understand nowadays, in the insulin resistance world, you don't know that. You can eat better, you can eat good, you can exercise well, and you can still have insulin resistance. And so fasting is one of the practices that I utilize because I want to minimize insulin resistance as much as possible. When I'm stuck in gas pedal, yes, I can't be stuck in gas pedal. I do get adjusted, but I am human. Those can play a role and actually can increase my insulin resistance. And I'll know because of different metrics I use to test. And so I have to utilize to back it up and, to get it back to where it needs to be. And I'll use fasting protocols and other things to help me get there. But like I said, if you have any questions, please let me know. But I want to thank you guys for being here on the fasting workshop. Until next time, be well, live well. The choice is yours.